So, God willing, we will be starting today from Surah 75, Resurrection. Let's seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Surah 75, Resurrection, Al-Qiyamah. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. I swear by the day of resurrection, and I swear by the blaming soul. Does a human being think that we will not reconstruct his bones? Yes, indeed, we are able to reconstruct his fingertip. But the human being tends to believe only what he sees in front of him. He doubts the day of resurrection. Once the vision is sharpened and the moon is eclipsed, and the sun and the moon crash into one another, the human being will say on that day, where is the escape? Absolutely. To your Lord on that day is the final destiny. The human being will be informed on that day of everything he did to advance himself and everything he did to regress himself. The human being will be his own judge. No excuses will be accepted. So, Masha Allah, this surah is talking about the day of resurrection, the day of judgment. The shocker, and so many names for the day of judgment in the Quran. They are referring to the same day, the final day, the final hour that God talks about in the Quran, all one and the same thing. And we will know will happen in the year 2280, 2280, which is less than 300 years from now. And I emphasize on that, for a reason, because, people get confused sometimes. They think that day of resurrection and day of judgment and all these are different days, but these are all the same days. One of the names for the day of resurrection is Al-Qiyamah, or in Arabic, or resurrection in English, day of resurrection, because we will all be resurrected on that day. And this is a surah which is named after the day of resurrection or the day of judgment, and God is swearing by the day of judgment. And usually, you swear on things that you know for a fact, and God is swearing on the day of judgment because it is a reality, and it has happened already. As far as God is concerned, just like you and me are talking right now, it's a reality, it's a fact. And so we have to be certain that the day of judgment is a fact, and it has happened already as far as God is concerned, And as far as we're concerned, we haven't witnessed it yet. Um, and God says, and I swear by the blaming soul. I mean, why is it blaming soul? Because, you know, um, I mean, on the day of judgment, the soul will be, the souls will be blaming other people for their failures, other people for bringing them into hell. Blaming people, blaming one another and cursing one another for misleading each other. Um, so the thing is that it says, does a human being think that we will not reconstruct his bones? Yes, indeed, we're able to reconstruct his fingertip. So if you see the fingertip, and you see the fingerprints, God is, I mean, it's very precise. These are very like delicate lines, and God says, He's able to reconstruct not only us, but He's able to reconstruct us precisely. So when you get reconstructed, you'll even have the same fingerprints, the same thing exactly. Like nothing is gonna be deviated from your body. He's gonna create you back the exact same way that you were created. I mean, this is very easy for God to do, as God says. But the problem is, as God says in the Quran, the human being only tends to believe what he sees in front of him. I mean, there are a lot of things we don't see in today's technology, so it shouldn't be like that difficult for us to understand that the eye is only capable of seeing certain things, The ears are only able to hear certain frequencies, and same with the eyes. We're able to see certain types of light and certain types of colors in this dimension. We're not able to see God, and we're not able to see the unseen, which is part of the test. But as far as the reality is concerned, it is a reality. We just don't see it, but we think what's real is only what is in front of us. God says, once the vision is sharpened and the moon is eclipsed and the sun and the moon crash into one another. So that's happens on the day of judgment. The vision is sharpened. We'll be able to see other things, and the moon will be eclipsed, and the sun and the moon will eventually crash into one another. That's one of the things that will happen on the day of judgment, I guess. You know, the human being will say on that day, "Where is the escape?" And God says, "We will be informed about everything that we did on that day. Nothing will be hidden. We'll have our own record, our own, almost like a video record of everything that we have ever done in this world, from birth till death. Will be handed over to us and accessible to us. We can see everything we did, and it will have every record, and it will be all like graded. We'll know exactly where we messed up and where we excelled, and what were what were the things people did to get their works nullified, for example. Everything will be in that record. People hide in this world, and when people are watching, and they do other things when they're alone, but our record will witnesses everything, and it will be given to us, and we will all be exposed, like nothing will be hidden, and no excuses will be accepted. People think that they can get away by making excuses, and people make all sorts of excuses, and they think, well, they'll go to God and on the day of judgment, and when they're asked about why they did certain things, they're going to make up these excuses. Well, I mean, you cannot fool God, and you cannot make these excuses, because we were already born with our natural instinct to worship God alone. And we were given the book, we were given the guidance, we were given the messengers, so that we will not have excuses on the day of judgment. So excuses will not be accepted from people. God willing, I'll continue reading verse 16. Muhammad forbidden from explaining the Quran. Do not move your tongue to hasten it. It is we who will collect it into Quran. Once we recite it, you shall follow such a Quran. Then it is we who will explain it. Indeed, you love this fleeting life while disregarding the hereafter. Some faces on that day will be happy, looking at their Lord. Other faces on that day will be miserable, expecting the worst. Indeed, when the soul reaches the throat and it is ordered, let go, he knows it is the end. Each leg will lay motionless next to the other leg. To your Lord on that day is the summoning. For he observed neither the charity nor the contact prayer salat, but he disbelieved and turned away. With his family he acted arrogantly. You have deserved this. Indeed, you have deserved this. Does a human being think that he will go to nothing? Was he not a drop of ejected semen? Then he created an embryo out of it. He made it into male or female. Is he then unable to revive the dead? So, I mean, these are really profound verses. One of the things we see here is that Muhammad was forbidden from explaining the Quran. And so God said to him, do not move your tongue to hasten it. It is we who will collect it into the Quran. Once we recite it, you shall follow such a Quran, then it is we who will explain it. So God didn't want Muhammad, he was forbidden from explaining the Quran. So when people talk about following hadith and they think the hadith is Muhammad explaining the Quran, I mean, they're wrong, because Muhammad was forbidden from giving out any other teachings besides the Quran. He was forbidden from even explaining the Quran. His job was simply to just deliver the Quran on its own, you know. So um, we we are we are actually supposed to understand from this that the Muhammad's only job was to deliver the Quran. He did not preach anything besides the Quran to people. And uh, and then the other thing we see here is that people love this life. People love this fleeting life. I mean, this life really is fleeting, you know, it passes by so fast without us realizing it. Um, you know, I mean, we think that it's a long time. It's not really. I mean, if you think about now, between now and since when you were a kid, I mean, where did that time go, right? I mean, you're already, I mean, for me, when I look at my life, like I can't tell like where did all that time go? Like it seems to be going so fast, you know, but like when you're kids and you think about the time, I mean, you think that this life is really long and it, you know, a lot of people just forget about it. I mean, they just think that even when they're old, like they think they will live forever, they will last forever. And they love this life, you know, they'll do anything for this life. You know, people cheat and lie and kill other people just so they can get more in this life, you know. And they disbelieve in the hereafter, really. That's when they do these types of things. This life becomes everything for them. Um, so what's going to happen on the day of judgment? There will be people that will be extremely happy and extremely excited because they know they're going to paradise. I mean, imagine, wouldn't you want to be one of those people that is so happy and so excited and, you know, looking forward to, you know, the greatest victory of your life, period, ever. You know, I mean, that's what we came here for, is our goal, you know. And so knowing that you have achieved your goal and you're saved from that great horror that everyone else's majority of the people, humans, would be suffering from on that day, you know, would be an awesome achievement. God calls the greatest triumph, right? Versus a person who would be expecting the worst. So basically, when the soul reaches your throat in verse 26, and it is ordered, let's go, let go. So that's when the angels, you know, come and they, you know, it's time to go, time to leave the body, you know. That's when we know that it is the end. And I mean, as whether you're a believer or disbeliever, I mean, on that at that moment, you will know what your destiny is. You know, of course, if the angels come in and gently invite you to leave your body, I mean, that means you're destined for paradise. But you know, if the angels come and they start beating you on your rear and your back, and you know, they're snatching your soul like forcefully, and you're resisting, I mean, that's just obvious indication that, you know, you're destined for hell based on the way you're being treated at that point, you know. It's all, you know, what we deserve. And so we will know on that day that, you know, it's the end. I mean, it's the end as far as anything, you know. So we have to keep that in mind and work hard. Um, basically, uh, this life is just a test, and we have to know that we're here for a very short time, you know, and we can't fall in love with this life and its vanities. I mean, of course, we can enjoy them, but we cannot fall in love with them to the point that we forget what we're here for and get distracted from our original goal. You know, it's like, you know, somebody cast you in a play, and let's say you're, you have like lots of belongings and friends or whatever, and you know, you start falling in love with those things in that play, forgetting about the real life. And it's just like that, I mean, you can't, because it's not real. I mean, an hour later, that performance is going to end, right? Until you can get back to reality. So you have to be, focused on the reality, not the illusion. And this worldly life is just an illusion. You have to remember that it's going to end pretty soon. Um, and so that's what happens to most people. They don't believe in the reality, which is the hereafter, and they fall for this temporary life. They don't believe in the unseen, and their priorities are mixed up. And when the life comes to an end, they realize they haven't done anything to prepare for the hereafter. So we have to prepare for our hereafter in a way that, you ask yourself now, are you ready? Are you ready if today your life comes to an end? Because you don't know when your life will come to an end, right? So we have to be prepared for that day, right? And prepare in a way that you can you can be ready that when it's time to leave, you have no regrets whatsoever, that you did everything you could for your salvation, to please God, and you didn't compromise your religion. You didn't go for the wrong things. You led a life that um, you have no regrets when it comes to your hereafter and your salvation. You did everything. So we have to think about it now and compare our life to what God says in the Quran, not to the people outside, that are doing whatever they want. But compare your life to what God has said in the Quran and ask yourself sincerely, like, are you really ready now? If your life came to an end now, like, do you have enough strength in your soul to withstand, God's physical presence, or is your soul really weak right now? Because we need to be able to withstand God's physical presence on the day of judgment, or we'll, you know, on our own volition, we'll go to hell. We will not be able to withstand God's physical presence, and we will not be able to get the ranks that we want. The ranks in the hereafter are eternal ranks. They last forever. So we have to do whatever we can. God says, "With pain there is gain." So we have to do what we can do and strive as much as we can. And God says, these people that are disbelievers, they don't give to charity, they don't observe their contact prayers. Of course, these are ways for us to grow our souls. This is the steak and lobster for your soul, to do your salat, to do your charity, zakat. I mean, these are steak and lobster for our soul. I mean, other things are good too. They're just snacks, but you're barely gonna grow your soul enough by just surviving on those snacks. If you're trying to build a strong soul, you're gonna have to feed it big meals, which includes all of your daily contact prayers, your charity, and then on top of that, all those snacks, right? So, but the people who don't believe in the hereafter, they act arrogantly with their families, with other people as well, especially with their families. I mean, we know, like, examples of people who act arrogantly with their families. And, of course, this is indicative of the fact that they don't really believe in the hereafter, because if they do, they would be humble and kind and compassionate, um, especially with their own families. Um, and why is it so difficult for people to really not believe in the hereafter? I mean, why do people think that they will they will go to nothing and they will not be resurrected? I mean, and God is asking this question, and it says, was he not a drop of ejected semen? Then he created an embryo out of it and he made it into male or female. Is he then unable to revive the dead? So it's a rhetorical question, but you ask yourself, right? I mean, think about your initial creation if you have any doubt about being resurrected, right? I mean, just think about it, like, let's say you're 45 years old, right? Go back 45 years old and imagine what you were. You were nothing. You were just a drop of liquid, that God says, and then you became an embryo, and now you're a person who's either male or female. So who did that? You didn't do it. Obviously, that liquid didn't have the brains to do it. It was God who did it, right? And He created you out of it. Now you're a full grown whole person who can think and walk and do everything. And so if God can do that, I mean, God is asking us, like, what is it that it would prevent God from doing that again? You know? And this is to help us also, clear our doubts about resurrection and about the hereafter. I mean, this is nothing extraordinary for God. I mean, and not we shouldn't be surprised either, because we know this is how we came into this world in the first place. You know, we were created from a liquid that turned into an embryo, and now, then bones and flesh grew on top of it, and the heart started to pump, and now we're grown people, and that's how we're going to be resurrected again in a flash. So we should not doubt at all in the hereafter. If we want to make it, we have to be fully certain about the hereafter. That's why these surahs are emphasizing over and over again about being resurrected. God willing, I'll continue reading Surah 76, the human, Al-Insan. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Is it not a fact that there was a time when the human being was nothing to be mentioned? We created the human from a liquid mixture from two parents in order to test him. Thus we made him into a hearer and a seer. We showed him the two paths. Then he's either appreciative or unappreciative. Okay, so it really goes back to the same thing we were just talking about, that, he created us out of a mixture. And there was a time when we were nothing to be mentioned, and God created us from two parents in order to test us. Then He made us into hearers and seers. I mean, if you just think about that, right? I mean, being created from a liquid, right, a drop, just think about that. And then, God gave it specific things, like, they could never just form on their own, right? You're being able to hear and being able to see, right? I mean, these are really, really advanced uh, mechanisms that God has given us that transform these electric signals into sound waves and, light waves, and, all these things are. It's not it's not a coincidence, and it's definitely not evolution. I mean, on its own, that can do that. So this is definitely a design of God and a creation of God, and so God is reminding us about that. The God is the one who did it, and He made us a seer and hear. Thus and we showed him the two paths, as either appreciative or unappreciative. So imagine, like, if someone takes away this hearing from us, or our eyes, and how much money would you want to spend to get your eyes back or your ears back? If you had $1 million, and someone said, you have to spend $1 million just to get your one eye back, not even two eyes, let's say one eye. You spend 1 million or more on each eye just to get your eyes, right? To have eyes if you don't have them. But God has given us eyes and ears, without asking us for anything. So we have to be appreciative. We have to show our appreciation to God, Like, a lot of times people can find things to appreciate Him for, but you can appreciate God for your eyes, appreciate Him for the hearing He gave you, If you don't have either, you still have a brain. If you don't have a brain, you'd probably be dead. So you do have a brain. You can thank God for all these blessings He has given you, all of these things that we can appreciate Him for. And, a disbeliever, another name for disbeliever is unappreciative, So you can't be a believer and be unappreciative. We have to appreciate God for everything He has given us. And appreciation does not mean just thanking Him. Appreciation means You appreciate by action, by obeying God, by following His laws and following His orders, by worshiping Him, day and night. That's appreciating God. And obviously, there is big rewards for it. It's not, I mean, it's for our own good. It says, we are prepared for the disbelievers, verse 4, prepare for the disbelievers chains, shackles, and a blazing hell. As for the virtuous, they will drink from cups spiced with nectar, a spring that is reserved for God's servants. It will gush out as they will. They fulfill their pleasures and reverence a day that is extremely difficult. They donate their favorite food to the poor, the orphan, and the captive. We feed you for the sake of God. We expect no reward from you nor thanks. We fear from our Lord a day that is full of misery and trouble. Consequently, God protects them from the evils of that day and rewards them with joy and contentment. He rewards them for their steadfastness with paradise and silk. They relax therein on luxurious furnishings. They suffer neither the heat of the sun nor any cold. The shade covers them therein, and the fruits are brought within reach. They are served drinks in silver containers and cups that are translucent. Translucent cups, though made of silver, they rightfully deserved all this. They enjoy drinks of delicious flavors from a spring that therein known as salsabil. Serving them will be immortal servants. When you see them, they will look like scattered pearls. Wherever you look, you will see bliss and a wonderful dominion. On them will be clothes of green velvet, satin, and silver ornaments. Their Lord will provide them with pure drinks. This is the reward that awaits you, for your efforts have been appreciated. Mashallah. So this is the description, allegorical description of paradise. Subhanallah, and we can all see it's very beautiful, and really, beyond what we expect, or what we can imagine. It's more beautiful and more awesome than whatever we can imagine. And so, but allegorically speaking, God gives us the descriptions allegorically, so that we can, somehow understand, and have like some type of an idea of at least what it may be like, because we have experienced it at all. So if we knew exactly what it was and God described it, I mean, we would have no real clue about it. We wouldn't understand. But therefore, God used these examples and allegories to describe these to us. Um, and the thing that we notice here is about these people is that I mean, it's talking about paradise in verse 5 and 6, and then 7, 8, 9, and 10, and 11, it talks about these people, who they were, that are rewarded by this beautiful paradise. And it says they fulfill their pledges and reverence a day that is extremely difficult. So they're mindful of the day of judgment. And it says they donate their favorite food to the orphans, and the captive and the poor. You know, so they are charitable people, and they're empathetic towards other people who are in need, and they help them, and they do this. Why say, we feed you for the sake of God, we expect no reward from you nor thanks. We fear from our Lord a day that is full of misery and trouble. So we should ask ourselves, I mean, are we you know uh, do we have these characteristics, in us? Like, if we're feeding people, I mean, how we're feeling, are we feeling the same thing that these people are feeling, or are we feeling like really good about ourselves, like, oh, I'm so righteous, look what I'm doing, you know? Or you're really thinking about the hereafter and God at that time, like you're doing it, for God and you have reverence for God and the fear of the hereafter, you're really doing it to save yourself, or you're doing it like really like, oh wow, I'm so great. Look what I'm doing. There's nobody as noble as me. So these are the things we have to know. God is teaching us this is what our mindset should be. Like we should be humble and we should be reverent of God and we should think about our hereafter. And we are doing, and you should be telling yourself. I mean, I don't think this is like telling the person that, hey, I'm feeding you because of this. But no, this is just, this could be even you just telling yourself that, I'm feeding this person not because I do want thanks or recognition or anything like that. I mean, you're only feeding them for your salvation, so you can save yourself, right? I mean, a lot of times people wouldn't give money, for example, to people, or they wouldn't want to help them because they think they'll do drugs and stuff like that, right? With it, and but it's like they forget that they're doing this not for the person, they're doing it for their own self. You're not really helping the other person, you're trying to help yourself. So if you feed someone or you help them, you know, you're doing it to help yourself. So if the person ends up misusing whatever you do for him, that's on him. But you're doing it for God. You're doing it for your own salvation. And consequently, God protects these people, what I mean, from the horrors on the day of judgment. And they get this paradise that God describes, because we love material things. God says the human beings love material things excessively. We love money, we love material things, and we like to hold on to them. And hereafter, by action, by giving, by knowing that you're putting your money or your provisions towards something that you don't see, but you believe it, and you do it by action, by investing into your hereafter that way, and this strengthens your faith, this strengthens your belief in the hereafter because you have invested into it, and and it grows your soul substantially. So we should take advantage of that and find opportunities to do these types of things without looking for recognition and without showing off in front of people. I mean, we see that happen a lot. People do these things and then they like to like take pictures of it and take videos and post it on social media and I all of this stuff, but you shouldn't do it that way, of course. I mean, you're doing it for your hereafter, you're doing it for your salvation, and you just do that without all of this, extra stuff, so that you can gain something from it. Uh, God says, we have revealed this Quran, a special revelation from us. You shall steadfastly carry out your Lord's commandments and do not obey any sinful disbeliever among them. Verse 25, and commemorate the name of your Lord day and night. During the night, fall prostrate before him and glorify him many a long night. These people are preoccupied with this fleeting life while disregarding just ahead of them a heavy day. We created them and established them, and whenever we will, we can substitute others in their place. This is a reminder whoever wills shall choose the path to his Lord. Whatever you will is in accordance with God's will. God is omniscient, most wise. He admits whomever he wills into his mercy. As for the transgressors, he has prepared for them a painful retribution. So another thing we see here is, God has revealed this Quran, a special revelation from him, as a reminder for us, with all these excellent reminders for us to help us save ourselves. And we see that, as we move forward into the Quran, these final surahs, we're reminded over and over again of the hereafter, more than the earlier surahs. Um, and that's just obviously, to remind us about the importance of it. Obviously, if you end up forgetting about the Day of Judgment, everything's gonna, go south, and as far as your hereafter is concerned. So we're being reminded over and over in the Quran, what what counts and what doesn't, and what we should focus on. And our focus should be God, and our focus should be the hereafter. And that's why we're being reminded to commemorate God day and night. We know that whatever occupies our mind most of the days are God, right? So if you spend 51% of your day or more thinking about whatever, that is your God. So we have to, that's why we have to give our time to God and commemorate Him as much as possible. Even when you're doing other things like eating or doing anything, you should be thinking about God, thinking about the food that God gave you, what went into it, thinking about your prayers and during the day at work, you should be thinking about God and how to please Him. And this is how we can make God our God through everything, um, because people are, as it says here, people are preoccupied with this fleeting life. They're doing everything they can just to be winners in this temporary life, but they're not doing nearly as much or anything at all, most of them, for their actual life, which is the hereafter, which is going to be eternal. Our ranks are going to be eternal. So we have to do everything we possibly can to save ourselves so that we can be winners, not just in this life, but also in the hereafter. So with this, God willing, I'd like to end. And if you guys have any comments or questions, feel free. Thank you.
Masha Allah, it was really nice. Praise God.
Thank you, Masha Allah.
I really like the how you described the from the liquid how God. Sorry, I'm getting feedback.
Oh,
Thank you.
how about now? Is it good?
Yeah, it's good, mashallah. Thanks. Yeah, that imagine if somebody could think about it that how does a drop of some liquid can pr- turn into a perfect structure with bones and eyesight and brain and hearing. Like, can anybody even remotely can do something like that, and how God created and how we were nothing some time ago. And if that can happen, why doesn't resurrection is so hard to believe? I mean, how could resurrection be so hard to believe? Praise be to God. Beautiful example.
Yeah, mashallah, amazing. I mean, God says a drop, but in fact, it's a single cell that is not even visible to the naked eye and start multiplying and becomes a little embryo. And then in the verse, God says that after that, God says, then we created male or female. And even when somebody is pregnant, they can't tell you what's the gender. It takes about some time. I don't know exactly how many, like maybe a month or 2 months or 3 months, when they will be able to tell you exactly what the gender is. So in the beginning stage is just multiplying crazy. And afterward, how precise God is. I mean, who would know 1400 years ago when they didn't have any x-ray or anything or ultrasound to even look inside the womb to what's going on. And here God has written it down. MashaAllah, praise God. I mean, mashallah, I mean, God can create anything. I mean, God wills. I mean, look at the jinn, how they are created from fire. I mean, we can never imagine creating anything out of fire. We can cook with fire. We can, do other things, melt iron and all those things, baking, but actually it itself, if you think about it, a fire is burning. As soon as the source is gone, it just dies. I mean, can you actually make a creation out of it? Impossible to even think. But here, God has created jinns out of blazing fire. I mean, how that process, it's just mind-boggling to think. And the creation is so powerful. I mean, and that is just the jinn. And then God has, infinite amount of soldiers, and who knows how God, what He creates. I mean, God Himself knows every single human being. I mean, He knows every of His creations, every moment, what's going on. I mean, just think about how awesome God is, and that's when someone disobeys God or does anything that God doesn't want us to do. That's why it's so bad. He's the one created us. He's the one who gave us everything. Why would you ever even think about thanking someone else? I mean, in this life, if you do something for someone and they thank someone else, how bad do you feel? Just imagine your children would go thank somebody else, and here you've been working hard for them and they thank somebody else. How bad would that feel? You know, I mean, I've seen people literally crying over their kids that they don't listen to them and they they are respecting somebody else. I mean, God has created us, and if we do the same thing, that's where we understand how bad the idol worship is. MashaAllah. Thank you.
Yeah, mashallah. Um, nice reflection on creation of jinns, right? That all the other creations, everything God created on this planet is created with water, right? The main element is water. And jinns from whatever the elements are in the fire, right? And uh, when I think about that, I think about it as light, right? And how fast light can travel. Uh, and that's how I feel like, whatever the light, the element of, like something which can just travel so fast, right? We know that jinns can travel really fast. So it's like something eyes cannot see, but like a laser or some kind of light or fire or whatever that element is. God can create whatever He wants and however He wants. Subhanallah. And God has shown us every kind of creature on this planet, from plants to the sea and ocean creatures and the birds, humans, and you know um, all the creations which are reproducing. Um, then there's system for their sustenance. Like we don't provide food to the fish in the ocean or in the rivers or the birds or animals in the woods and stuff. It just God has created everybody's self-sustainable system as well. The whole ecosystem is so beautifully designed that it's continuously reproducing and coming, resurrecting, like all the trees and all the plants and everything comes back to life in springtime and all that. So why resurrection would be hard for God? And that's the believing in the resurrection is because God says human being only believes what he can see. And here we are, we have to believe in God we don't see. We have to believe in the angels we don't see. We have to believe in the hereafter, another life. We don't remember we had one and we cannot envision it or see it. So that's the test. But that God has provided all these proofs to believe what when He says you believe, because the proofs are everywhere. And on top of that, God sends messengers with solid proofs about divine, you know, revelations that this person is not making it up. Like here is a solid proof with this messenger or prophet. Masha Allah.
Yeah, mashallah. You know how God is talking about these verses in Surah 76, about a picture of heaven. I was listening to one of the psychologist and motivational speaker, and they said that your mind is so powerful. You can imagine something, and you can actually feel much of it. Maybe you may not even feel being there, because when you are in a surrounding, your mind is such a occupied with all the stuff that's going on. But when you sit down and close your eyes in a loneliness, and when you're alone, I mean, you can actually feel the actual feeling and being imagine being somewhere. And here God is putting all these pictures, and if you just imagine all this stuff, I mean, translucent cups, and made of silver. I mean, what kind of silver would that be? That see-through silver. These are not a glass. Flavors of different drinks, different. I mean, God uses the word flavors, and we go to like Baskin Robin or other places. There are so many different flavors, and we cannot imagine there how many flavors gonna be in the hereafter. What kind of tongues or the source of taste of capacity we would have, that right now we can only taste so many different flavors. Our tongue has a limit to it, and still there's like so many different flavors of sour, and you have so many different dishes, and so many different tastes. I mean, you look at the cooking channel and how they kind of taste it, and they tell you, okay, this tastes like this and this. And so we have still a lot of variety, but we can never imagine about the hereafter. How many varieties of flavor would that be, and or food or anything else in that matter. And right here, you always watch your diet, because the more sweet you take, I mean, this is sugar is your enemy. It's gonna give you diabetes, so you can only eat so much before that's it. There's no more. You gotta wait or work out. But in the hereafter, you can drink as much as you want, you can eat as much as you want, but it will not give you sickness. You will not have a stomach ache or any bad feeling. All God says, bliss everywhere, bliss and bliss everywhere, just joy and happiness. You will never be bored, because as now we know that bored coming from your dopamine receptors, because when you enjoy something, when you buy something that give you a dopamine release, you buy a brand new car, you get so excited. But have you noticed, about a month later, that car will not give you the shock that you had it when you bought it first time, because your dopamine have been releasing, and all these serotonins and chemical reactions in your brain. Now you need much more than that. So if you can understand that part, where things will not give you happiness, you will stop running after this worldly life, where God has even writes here that these disbelievers, they run after this worldly life, which actually does not give you any happiness. It will give you a short time spark, but then you need more. That's why you see people always running for more, always, and they always miserable. They never get satisfied. I mean, I've seen millions of, I mean, so many examples out there, but still human being doesn't learn, and he wants more and more. I mean, I just recently have a guy who bought two brand new cars, and he hates them now. And I'm like, about a month ago you were talking about it, and you don't like it anymore. Yeah, don't you see what's the problem here is, and how, mashallah, God explains to us in this beautiful Quran the human philosophy, I mean, so we can learn and stop learning after these worldly life, and instead run after God. Mashallah. Thank you.
If we just read words of Quran, I was like reading this Surah 76. I mean, imagine these kind of narrations, how beautifully. Who can, which human being can just even come up with something like that? Like how God says, is it not a fact that there was a time when the human being was nothing to be mentioned, and then everything, and then description of heaven and hell and all that, these translucent cups, though made of silver, they rightly deserved all this. It's just really actually paints a picture of absolutely something out of this world. When you think about hereafter, really, you go in a different dimension mentally and try to capture that. And this is the biggest hope. When I became like submitter, like although I was born in a Muslim family, but belief in the hereafter was something wasn't there, right? You always heard, yeah, there is, life after death, and day of judgment will come and all that, but you would just really, it would not sink in until I read the Quran. As soon as I read this Quran, it was like not the math miracle, not anything. Words of God, when I read first time like this, it was like, whoa, this is not written by a human being. That was first thing dawned upon me. Like, no, 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 no. There is definitely hereafter. It was, I cannot describe the feeling. Like nobody gave me mention. Someone left the book in the house because I would never listen to them, and they would invite me come for Quran study. And one day I'm like, I really not interested. And this person left the Quran in my house and you know gone, and I just opened it and started to read, and like seriously, it was like lightning just struck. What happened to me? I have no idea. I just felt prostrate. It was like an immediate reaction. I don't know what kind of state of mind I was. I was in a very dark place, and it was like the light just hit me like with I don't know how much power, and everything just this whole life became started to look extremely different right away. Right away, it was. I just cannot explain how it happened to me because my family saw the immediate reaction, and they could not even recognize me. Like, what happened overnight? Yeah, and people would not, like, they were completely shocked. Myself, I was too. So these words of God, like everybody I know, everybody gets the message in their own way. Some look at the mathematical, some, you know seeking for something in some information, and they stumble upon this translation and all that. For me, it was just I opened one page and I just started to read, and the tears were just falling, and I cried so hard and so hard, and I know I cried for weeks and months. Um, this did completely changed my life from that day, from that moment. Nobody convinced me. Nobody showed me. The miracle became like something secondary for me. Like I just believed in the Quran right there and then, and that was it. Masha Allah, miracle, and then the audio videos of Messenger just, subhanallah, gave me more proof and information and strengthened my faith. My faith was developed like right away, and it was shocking. Um, Praise be to God. Thank you, God, for sending the light. Okay, so if there are no more comments, then maybe we can just wrap up.
Oh, okay, that sounds good. I think that sounds good to me. If nobody has any questions, God willing, thank you all for joining us. Our next study is going to be on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, and God willing, our teacher is going to be Nidrat.
Yes, inshallah. Thank you for
Inshallah.
today.
Alright,
I just
um,
got late at work, and then other things started to happen and completely forgot.
no worries. No worries.
Inshallah, yes.
Inshallah. Okay, take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. Assalamu alaikum.